Alternative centers of power. In the previous classes, we have talked about how America started to develop as a superpower. But after the 1990s, we have seen that the superpower that was primarily concentrated in the regions of Americas and the Soviet Union so far has started to basically, we could say, decentralize, and the power pockets started to increase in the regions of European Union and in the regions of ASEAN. So in this lecture, we would talk about two important alternative superpowers that were developing, and those are the European Union and the regions of Southeast Asia, which was known as ASEAN. So if we talk about the very beginning and the starting, the question of Europe, how it started. So as we could see, there were initially few nations which were part of the European Union, but these nations started to slowly and gradually increase, and even the Finno-Scandinavian nations started to become party to the European Union. Now, how European Union reconstructed itself on the old platform and a new development or a new conception was seen has been important, and the same has been the case with the ASEAN group that we would understand in a while. So we have seen that there has also been rise of economic power of China, and this has affected dramatically the world politics. So there has been numerous peaceful cooperations that have started between nations coming together, forming groups, and therefore alternative power centers started to develop, and European Union and ASEAN are its classic example. So let's talk about these one by one in further detail. European Union, how the formation of European Union started is pretty interesting. So after the 1945, which was the end of the Second World War, we had seen that the Cold War started, the support from US started, and there was an economic revival in the European nations. This was laid down under the Marshall Plan, but the idea was to bring in a sense of security among the nations. As a result, NATO was established, and this NATO aimed at providing collective security. However, with the development, we had seen that the nations of Western Europe started to get into alliance with the regions of Eastern Europe, and under this, there was a OEEC formation that took place, which was Organization for European Economic Cooperation, and the idea was to cooperate mainly on the trade and commerce. So it started with the conceptualization of Council of Europe back in 1949, which was predominantly a political cooperation. Later on, European Economic Community was built up in 1959, and this was a economic cooperation. There was creation of European Parliament that started, and finally the establishment of European Union. Now this establishment of European Union was a summation of economic cooperation as well as political cooperation together. So European Union led to the political cooperation and economic cooperation. It was not just the political and economic cooperation, but also there was cooperation on the front of foreign security, we could say policy making. So there were numerous aspects that were taken into account. Single currency, single national anthem was propounded under European Union. So if we talk about the highlights, as we said, it was predominantly a cooperation in terms of economic cooperation, political cooperation. There was no constitution that was formed, but despite that there was no constitution, it had its own flag, its own national anthem, the common currency in the name of euro, the common visa in the name of Schengen. So those are some of the examples that talked about the unity in terms of European Union. The founding date remained common, and definitely there were common issues on foreign security policies that had taken place. So it had a huge economic, diplomatic and political influence globally. EU is considered as one of the biggest economies in terms of its GDP globally, which is slightly larger than that of United States. Also, the currency euro has its importance and dominance in international world, and its share is 3 times larger than that of the American dollars. which focuses on the assertive trade disputes that are commonly seen between US and China. Also, European Union has a significant role in WTO. So it joined WTO and has a significant role in WTO. If we talk about some of the nations from European Union, Britain and France are important because they are part of the European Nation Security Council with permanent seats. Also, we do have several non-permanent members that are part of the United Nations Security Council. So those are some of the other important things. The combined armed force of European Union is second largest in the world. The spending on defense is second largest after United States, and it is also second largest in terms of space and communication technology. If we focus on countries like Denmark, the countries like Sweden, these were the countries that had resisted the Maastricht Treaty, and later on the adoption of the common currency, which was euro. We also have matters of foreign trade, defense, which have been very important with European Union. As we could see here, initially it was just the nations of France, parts of Germany and Italy which were part of the European Union, but later on Spain, Portugal, then we had the East Germany, later on we had the regions of Finno-Scandinavian countries, the Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the Romania, Bulgaria region. So those were the nations, that the Czech and Austria regions, the Romania, the Bulgaria and Romania areas. So those were the regions that slowly and gradually were part of the European Union. So the European Union was not established or not strengthened in one day. Slowly and gradually nations came together. There were treaties that were signed. There were European community that was built in. Greece joined as a part of the European community in 1981, and later on we had the Schengen agreement that was signed between these nations which are part of the European community. Formation of European Union started or took place in 1992 formally, and since then we had a single market that was created within the Europe, and that was one of the major reasons for the growth and the prosperity of European Union. And later with the Brexit, you had United Kingdoms that exited from the European Union. So there have been changes that have been seen. Now even the exit of the Brexit, as it is called, is, or the exit of Britain, is interesting because it would significantly change the food subsidies that are actually there, and how it would impact the agricultural world in long term has been very important. However, that would be something that we would discuss in a separate lecture. But this was about how European Union actually formed, the history behind the formation of European Union, how with US aid Marshall Plan came in, NATO was formed, and later OEEC was established, and finally we had the European community, the creation of European Parliament, and the European Union with a common currency as euro and a common visa as Schengen visa, and with a single market that was laid down. ASEAN turned as an economic superpower and as one of the alternative centers of power. Now, during the world wars, we had seen that the regions of ASEAN, or the Southeast Asia particularly, had significant economic and political consequences that were seen. As a result, this region was not able to move out of the issues that were created because of colonialism. Later on, it was 10 nations who came together to form a common unit, and this was known as ASEAN. However, initially there were 5 nations that came or joined hand, and these were the regions of Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia and Vietnam coming together. Later on we had Myanmar, Laos, as Cambodia, Brunei and Philippines that joined in to form this present-day ASEAN with its 10 members. The efforts of ASEAN and the Third World Unity basically started with 2 important conferences. One were the Badung Conference, and the next was the Non-Alignment Movement. Both of them paved the ways for strengthening of the ASEAN group, and later on ASEAN got support from the East Asian members as well as South Asian members. So it got support later on from India and China, and the growth of ASEAN further boosted. So if we focus on some of the major developments of ASEAN, as we said, it was established by 5 nations in 1967, and those were the nations which joined hand under the Bangkok Declaration. The idea was to accelerate on 3 parameters: the economic aspect, the social aspect, and the cultural aspect. Regional peace and stability became very, very important. However, the concept of ASEAN was very, very different from other regional cooperations that were there, and this focused on a kind of informal, cooperative, non-confrontation group that was developed, and there was a friendly tie or friendly relation between the various nations that were there. The 5 nations that were later added became very, very important, and ASEAN's flag is again very interesting. It talks about the rice stacks that are there, and there are 10 rice stacks indicating the 10 nations that are part of ASEAN. It has 3 pillars: the security community, the economic community, and the social cultural community. The security community basically focuses on settling down any kind of territorial disputes that exist, creating a better infrastructure. The economic forum talks about regional cooperation and regional forum that is there. Also, in terms of the composition, we could say ASEAN is much more smaller to European Union or to US or Japan, but has a strong economic ties. It opened itself with the free trade areas which are called as FTA, and India also was part of this FTA agreement. In 2009, India developed a free trade agreement with ASEAN only in goods. Later on in 2014, it was opened for services as well. So India has very good ties with ASEAN in terms of free trade agreements in goods and services that are there. Also, ASEAN had been constantly mediating if there had been any issues relating to East Timor crisis or Cambodian conflict or any other East Asian cooperation issues that needs to be discussed. Socio-cultural pillars have been very, very strong. As we said, they are it's a kind of informal and a friendly cooperation between the nations that have been seen. So the role of ASEAN independently is very, very important. The flag again is very important for you to know, and we have seen there have been several dialogues and several agreements that have gone through ASEAN, mainly for peace building, upholding cooperation, building in a kind of nation with its own rights and duties that were there. So creating a unit which was in totality and unique had been very important idea under ASEAN. We would be covering many important sections under the rise of alternate powers, and ASEAN being one of the major powers, a regional power similar to what we have discussed is European Union as an alternative power center after the Second World War. Chinese economy had been rising after 1949. How and why is something that we would discuss now. The idea was, we had seen that China was very close to the region of Soviet Union, and the domino effect was seen. That means the idea of communism was very, very dominant. Domino effect is an effect that if any nation has a particular ideology, that ideology spreads to the nearby nations, and from the erstwhile Soviet Union, that ideology started to spread to the regions of China, and China started to follow or base itself on communism. However, after 1949, the People's Republic of China was established under Mao, and economy that started was based on Soviet model. The model was created with the state-owned industries, and the idea was capital accumulation from agriculture. So agriculture, which was one of the mainstays, was important, and getting foreign exchange with capital infrastructure, state-owned economy was the idea. However, this did not turn out to be a viable thing, but after 1978, the economy started to boom. There were changes in the the ideas under how the Chinese economy should function. And as of now, we can say by 2040, it is predicted that China would probably overcome even United States in terms of its economy. But how this happened has been important. The first reason attributed to it is the employment and the social welfare assurance that was given. There was foundation of industrial development that started. The economy was growing at a very good pace of 5 to 6% under the Soviet model, where you had state owned industries that were there, but at the same time the population was growing at 2 to 3%. Now this rising population was not able to meet the production levels, and therefore there was a kind of insufficient economic growth that was witnessed. Agricultural production that was taking place was not sufficient for its people to feed. However, there was changes in the leadership that was seen. Initially, we have seen that the per capita income, as in the Soviet Union, the domino effect was seen and the per capita income was low. Chinese leadership took a major change in 1970s. Since then, the economic and the political structure, the political isolation, the economic isolation of China ended, and there were good relations that they started to establish with United States in 1972. Under Enlai, there were four modernization aspects that were released, and these four pillars were agriculture, industry, science and technology, and finally military. So innovations and discoveries started in these four dimensions as agriculture, industry, science and technology, and military. And by 1973, it was said that China had totally revamped its previous model, and under the leadership of Xi Jinping, there was the open door policy that started. With the open door policy, the idea was to open its economy and bring in higher investments by capital and technology coming in from abroad. So what happened was the first privatization wave took place in agriculture. As the agricultural privatized, with the agriculture there was rising incomes that were seen. Agriculture started to boom and the rural economies prospered. The rural savings significantly improved. This gave a thrust to industries, and by 1998, industries started to privatize. With the privatization of industries, there were more foreign players that were seen in Chinese market. However, these foreign players were only limited to certain economic zones. So these were known as the SEZs, or the special economic zones, where they were there. And finally, in 2001, accession to WTO further opened the doors, and a large amount of foreign exchange reserves were allowed to make big investments in China, even from other nations. So, China's economy started to saw a sudden boom and prosperity after the doors for privatization opened. Foreign investment started to flow in, and this was where the economy started to grow. But it did had its dark side. What was the dark side? The dark side was the unemployment figures were rising to all-time high. Despite the economic growth, there was jobless growth. Automation, machines, mechanization had led to lack of jobs. Only skilled jobs were now available, and lots of jobs were slowly and gradually weaving away. More than 100 million Chinese nationals were out of employment network, and there was rising unemployment that was seen. Also, the employment situation for the female workers was similar to what was there in the industrial revolution in Europe. The corruption levels soared to all-time high. Then they started with an idea of massive industrialization. As a result, environment became a second priority, and environmental degradation started to build up. Or in line with that, there were economic inequalities that started to rise. There were numerous issues with the nations like Japan, Russia, US that started, and the economic considerations were now slowly and gradually tapering down, and it was seen that the fear of China's rise was also one of the factors that had brought about fear in the Asian economies. and even there were financial crises that were witnessed in parts of the world as a part of the global upsurge that was seen. When it comes to India, India had its independence from China, from Britain, sorry, and at the same time, China was struggling and expelling the foreign powers out. So, both of these countries were trying to establish themselves at one point of time. However, later we had seen China started to take over the regions of Tibet in 1950s, and then we had the series of Sino-Indo border conflicts that were seen, and 1962 witnessed the Indo-China War. The relations started to taper down slowly and gradually. However, under the Rajiv Gandhi's government in 1988, we had seen that there was a change in the way the relations between India and China were. So those downgrading relations were slowly and gradually becoming much more pragmatic, much more ideological in nature, and there were border posts that were opening for trade between India and China. Agreements on cultural exchange programs started to come up. Cooperation in terms of science and technology started to develop, and also there was bilateral trade relations that were established. India also did in the meanwhile the nuclear test programs in 1998, and the idea was to say that we are trying to protect ourselves from the rising threat of China. Despite of that, our relations with China remain good. However, of recent we had seen that there have been a tapering relation again that has been seen with the main idea of Make in India shift. We are trying to move away from the Chinese industry and the Chinese market that is being seen as one of the major grounds for development in India. So those are some of the things that we have witnessed, how China was or has been rising as a superpower across the years, and how the internal developments in China were responsible for the economic boom, but it did had its dark side that was there. As we have seen that most of the nations that developed as an alternative power centers like European Union and ASEAN, we have also witnessed the role of rising economy in China, and then Japan is definitely another power center that we have witnessed. Japan was the only nation to suffer the nuclear attack during the world wars, and even till now it's the only nation that had suffered the nuclear weapons. Also, it is the nation that progressed significantly after World War II, and among the East Asian economies, it is considered as one of the developed nations. So, development has definitely seen a significant rise in the country of Japan. Asmo is one of the robots, that is a humanoid robot that has been developed. If we talk about brands like Canon, Suzuki, Honda, Mazda, Panasonic, all of these brands belong to Japan. So Japan's economy prospered despite of the fact that the population is significantly high. It is one of the members of G8 nation groups. Also, in terms of military expenditure, just 1% of the GDP is being spent for military. But among all the nations, the proportion of expenditure in military is significantly much higher than other nations. So Japan spends a lot of money on its military and security services. Also, in terms of United Nations budget, contribution to United Nations budget, Japan's role has been very, very important. Japan is the second largest contributor to the UN budget annually. So those are some of the major things that we have talked about Japan. So in this lecture, we have focused on how the alternative power centers started to grow after the Second World War. We have seen how the coalition of the various nations in Europe under European Union with a common currency, a common visa and an open market, a single market, had seen a huge development. Similarly, in the Southeast Asian nations, we had the ASEAN group, which included the 10 members, and these 10 members, which were based on much more informal note and a friendly relation, became very, very important. The rising powers like Japan and China. So that was about how the developments and the power centers were slowly and gradually changing. We would be focusing on more world political topics in the upcoming lectures. Stay tuned for many updates from NCERT from our side. Have a wonderful day ahead.